Hello and welcome to your third project, Studio Art Project 3, creating an image through pixels. And in this project, we're going to think a bit about pixels, but we're going to be creating an analog form. And so pixels are what you see on your computer. It means a picture element, and so it's a smaller unit of information that comes together to make a bigger unit of information, aka the images you see on your computer. So if you were to drag a picture, say, into Photoshop and blow it up and blow it up and blow it up, you would see a lot of little squares that come together to make an image. So our computer screens generally read images into different squares and map it out so that they can know when they should have a dark green square versus a light green square to come together to make an image. This is unlike old school photography that was made up of dots or grains. These were silver grains that were suspended in a gelatin emulsion, and when you exposed them to light, they turned different shades of gray, or if you had color film, different colors. And actually, one of the interesting facts I learned in filmmaking was that pixels are grains, actually grains of silver, are more closely aligned with how we see. If you close your eyes for a minute and even just ever so gently press on your eyelids, you will see little dots, or sort of like little, pixels, little grains. Our eyes, that's kind of the noise that your brain filters out. But that is something that is kind of always present in your vision. We just compensate for it, or don't see it because we're so used to it. Pixels are a little different because they're more mapped out and they're square. So they're a little bit less organic. And here you can see the picture of a tree or woods, and then when they've zoomed out, you can really see in this image how closely, or how sort of geometric pixels represent an image. So seeing in pixels, or trying to paint pixels, is nothing new. George Seurat, or as I knew him as a young kid, was Seurat the Dot, painted in a style called pointillism. He really kind of invented pointillism. He was part of the neo-impressionists, and impressionists were artists that kind of came out and right around the time that photography was becoming popular as an art form, there was a bunch of artists that were like, why paint realistically anymore? The camera's doing it. We're going to do something else. We're going to paint light. And so Seurat kind of came sort of at the end of that, and he started painting with dots, putting lots of little dots on a page. And he didn't just put dots on the page. What he did was he would put, if you wanted green, he would put a yellow dot and a blue dot together, and your eyes blend to create that image. So this is a very famous photograph of his, or painting of his, sorry, a very famous painting. This is actually a study he did for it. So at the Art Institute of Chicago is La Grande Jetée. It's a huge painting, and it's really fun because you can stand back from it and see this image, and then get closer and closer and closer and watch the image kind of dissipate into these little dots. So when you're about 3 feet away, you're pretty much looking at this beautiful field of sort of vibrating points that, as you move back, come together to form an image. And so here you see another one of Seurat's pictures in pointillism, La Parade des Cercles. And I'm sorry if you speak French and I mispronounce that. In here you can see, oops, wrong direction. Here you can see really kind of what I'm talking about. So if you see that guy in the corner there, that's what he looks up close. And then even closer, he just looks like this beautiful field of dots. So it's a technique to kind of create vibration, to kind of get your eyes to do part of the work too. So it's very active because your eyes are blending these together to see color. And they're very interesting to see in person when you move between distance and close up. So the next artist we're going to see is Invader. Vader uses pixels in a very different way, and somewhat to homage to the digital world, to old video games. And so Vader goes around the streets of Paris and elsewhere too. I've seen his work, I think in New York, definitely in London, but definitely in Paris. He makes these mosaics, and he maps out a picture, and he uses that picture to plan out the mosaics in a way. He lays them out on a kind of like a mesh screen, and then he'll go into public spaces and attach this to the wall, and then you have this sort of ceramic, almost like bathroom tile piece of graffiti that is stuck to place. And you'll also see that he is now incorporating that technique to making pictures with Rubik's Cube. So we're going to watch a short video where he talks about his work.
Paris is under invasion from some familiar-looking aliens. Both futuristic and retro, these UFOs are straight out of the early video game and cult icon Space Invaders. The French street artist Invader named himself after the game, and for 15 years he's been running his own art project, which has seen these creatures springing up in cities all over the world. Now he's about to complete his 1000th Space Invader in Paris, which is holding a retrospective to mark the occasion.
Why Space Invaders? It's true, you could read a lot into it, but for me it represents the first steps of digital, the first video games, from which everything else followed. Computers, the internet.
In this exhibition, the Space Invaders are everywhere, on fridges, at discos, even on your shoes. There's photos of all of them, from the first to land in 1996 down to the last, which is still being finished just a few hours before the exhibition opens. It's an unusual body of work, even among other street artists.
I didn't come from graffiti, so I'm not a graffiti artist. I've always defined myself as someone who invades. Above all, of course, I see myself as an artist.
With the 1000th Space Invader finished, Invader himself is now moving on. His new project also draws on a retro pop culture classic. These works are all created using a Rubik's Cube. He calls the style Rubik's Cubism.
It's really an icon of my generation. Everyone who grew up in the 80s had one of these in their hands, and I actually find myself doing the Rubik's Cube for hours in my workshop, just like a painter mixing up new colours.
With a retrospective on in Paris and a promising new direction to explore, Invader is hoping he can take his place among the big names of street art like Britain's Banksy. And with his UFOs already invading more respectable galleries, he may not have long to wait.
So our next artist, Vic Muniz, is really famous for just creating photographs with lots of different materials. I think I first saw his work at the Henry Art Gallery, where he was doing portraits out of chocolate, like he had Freud out of chocolate. It was like chocolate syrup that he would draw with and then take a photograph of it. And he had all these different people made out of foods, and he makes them out of waste and paper scraps and toys. And he constantly is like, his work lives in photographic form, because a lot of it, like making a Marilyn Monroe out of diamonds, requires him to probably borrow the diamonds and then set up the photograph, the image, take the photograph, and then he sells a photographic print. So the actual origin of the image is temporal. It's the photograph that lives on in galleries and shows. So he did a movie called Wasteland, and he went into, so he's a Brazilian artist, and there was a very, very large dump near Rio. And so there's people that would go through the garbage and pick things for useful or work for the garbage company. And he went out there and worked with them to collect garbage, to create different images that they would draw on the ground. And then he would get up in a tall boom and photograph them. And he sold the photographs and returned the money to that community to help those workers. So Wasteland it's like a Sundance nominated film. So it's from, I believe, about 2010. So if you're interested in his work, I recommend that you check that out. And just here's some more examples of his work. I'm sorry for not having the titles on these. Here's a bunch of little toy soldiers used to make a soldier, an image of a soldier, and then you also have Van Gogh's sunflowers, and he's done that with little squares of paper. So he's actually very much following the idea of a pixel in this image. And this final image from him is of Pele. And Pele, if you don't know, is a famous soccer player from, I want to say, about the late 70s, early 80s. And if you notice, this is the most similar image to what you're going to be doing. And I just want you to take a minute to notice all the different colors that are in his shirt. So all these different dots that come together to make his shirt, different colors to make his face, different colors to make the background, even though that they make this homogenized image, they're comprised of all these different shades and hues from little dots of paper. So we're going to watch a video about his work, and then I will give you the assignment prompt.
Estou sempre buscando imagens que, no total, ela já faz parte da sua memória visual. Isso é uma série que chama Pictures of Magazine, fotos de revista, né? E é justamente você tentar criar uma situação pictórica, recriar uma situação pictórica com um conteúdo que já existe. Mas quando você se depara com ela, com uma escala grande, você vai começar a se dar conta que essa imagem é feita de milhares de pedacinhos de outra imagem. Você vai ser sujeito a uma série de pequenas distrações. Você está sempre tentando recuperar e negociar essa relação entre o detalhe e a totalidade da imagem. A primeira coisa é quando você olhar uma imagem, estudar ela, uma vez que a cor está certa e decidida, a gente começa a tentar procurar em revistas um pouco, então pegar, arrancar a página, né? Criar uma situação onde a origem dessas pequenas imagens não parece que você consegue identificar uma fonte singular de onde as imagens estão vindo. Né? Da ideia de DJ, consegue fazer uma música inteira com breaks pequenininhos, né?
Faço o corte sempre com a mão para eu evitar de usar a tesoura.
Além disso, eu uso o scanner que me dá uma imagem com uma resolução de alguns gigapixels. Essa vai ser a escala final. Nessa escala, você consegue ver também o halftone, né, a trama dessas imagens que elas foram impressas, o fato que elas foram impressas com baixíssima resolução. Você está vendo ao mesmo tempo uma coisa muito nítida e muito fora de foco. Essa ambiguidade é muito interessante.
Okay, so we have the hole punch, markers, the glue stick, magazine or junk mail or whatever colored papers you can find, a photograph of what we're going to be drawing or recreating. You can also just have a picture on your tablet or computer. And then just some of the cards as kind of backup. You can actually do your picture on the cards if you want to use a technique that's going to be very small and detailed. I recommend starting with the big paper just because you can always cut it down. But that way you don't run out of room. I'm going to draw in marker so that you can see it, but I recommend that you draw in pencil. And the first thing you're going to do is you're going to recreate your image on the paper. So if you have the means to trace it, you can do that. You can freehand it. You can even draw a portrait of someone looking at them, although I'd still take a photograph so that you have the colors and all the different values later on. But I'm just going to do a quick freehand draw for this demonstration. So if please don't feel free to take your time doing this. You just need a really basic geometric line drawing to fill in. And now I'm going to start collecting. I'm going to start with the first technique. So you have multiple techniques to choose from. One is using hole punch dots, and so just finding different papers, different materials, and then once you punch the holes out, they actually get contained in the hole puncher, which is really nice. So you open it up and you dump them out, and then you can either choose, I find it's easier to glue up a surface than it is to put glue on each individual little dot. So I've glued up the surface, and this gets a little tricky after a while. You're going to see I start getting glue on my fingers, but laid down a nice, as many dots as you can, and then my suggestion is to do it, let it dry, and come back to it. I'm just trying to show a demo, so I didn't have a lot of time to stop and then come back later. But I am getting glue on the surface and then putting each little dot down. And now they're starting to stick to my fingers. You're going to see in a little bit that I get smart and I go get a wet cloth so that I can clean the glue off of my fingers in between, every so often, so that it doesn't get so tricky. And so I'm going to just keep filling up the space, and I'm looking for different colors too. It's going to be a lot more interesting if I have multiple shades of red or even orange and yellow, warm tones that will kind of vibrate next to each other, kind of what we saw with Seurat's work, so that you're creating something that looks a little more complex and actually kind of mimics how our eyes see and allows for sort of multiple colors to come together to create that red apron that we're seeing in the photograph. So I've sped this up a little bit, just in case you were wondering. So I found this, really cool sort of imagery from Yayoi Kusama's show advertisement, and it has even like so many colors within each dot because of the way that that advertisement that I've punched holes out of is laid out. And so it really kind of adds a lot of vibrancy and a lot of color, and it's okay to not have solid colored dots or pieces of paper. If anything, just having even the text in there. I think if you look closely at some of the things shown in Vic Muniz's video, you'll see that there's even text and little bits and pieces or even recognizable photos within within each little piece of paper that he applied to the paper. And it actually creates a really interesting image. And don't worry, you're not going to watch me fill this whole thing with dots. In a minute, I'm going to be switching to another technique. You're welcome to pick one of these techniques. I just, for time's sake, I've done them all on this particular one. So this one is the dot technique, or the hole punch technique. And I don't think I've mentioned it yet, but you guys have 2 weeks to do this project. Given how detailed it is, I wanted to give you more time. I wanted you to be able to relax and do it. It's actually pretty cathartic or relaxing to just kind of slowly build up the surface. So you will show a work in progress on Sunday, next Sunday, but you won't, or next Monday, but you will not have to submit a finished project. Or actually, we don't have class on Monday, so next Tuesday, the first class we have together again after the weekend, that's the day that you'll show me a work in progress, and then you'll have an entire another week to complete your work. So now I'm tearing, and I actually have to say this is the one that feels the most natural to me. But I'm tearing pieces of paper because I'm going to show you another technique on the other side of the apron. That also, it's actually more closer aligned to some of the work that you saw in the Vic Muniz video. But it is, I find that it's just kind of, I like the organic look, and I like how it pieces together, and so it's still kind of a lot of little images to create a bigger image. So it still fits with that pixelated image, but it's a little bit looser and kind of crazier. And this is actually very similar to a lot of the work that I liked doing in high school. There's something nice about tearing paper. It always felt very like stress relieving. And so now I'm just taking these little torn pieces of paper from different colors, different parts of the magazines, and I am just gluing them on top of each other and kind of creating, using it to make a multicolored surface that still reads as that sort of orange-red color that, like the apron in the photograph. So now you have two techniques. You can either make dots or you can tear little scraps of paper. And yes, that is a art form that was hanging out in the sculpture lab for several years. So I think it's a 2017. So if you collect magazines or newspapers in the house, just make sure you get the okay to tear them up. Make sure that it is not something that any family member is in the process of reading. So if you don't have any, let's say there's just no scrap paper anywhere in your home, you're traveling, so whatever reason you don't have scrap paper, you can also use the markers to create a surface of color, and then use that to go ahead and either hole punch or tear or cut into shapes. It's a little more laborious, and you'll be limited to the markers that you have in your kit, but it will still work. And it's still speeding this up, so if it looks like I'm working at a superhero pace, it is not. It is the power of video editing that you're seeing. And I didn't really have, so my sweatshirt in the photograph is black, and you can see to the right of me that I do have some black materials, but I didn't have a black marker, so I'm just improvising with it's a gray marker. It's the closest I could come to, and because the marker streaks had different values, it wasn't a completely even coat. Some places where I put the marker over the paper more than once, it's going to be a little bit darker, and that's why you see these dots that are different values. It's okay to improvise or to creatively make creative choices to changing the colors to what you have available to you. And the combination of gray and blue does not technically make black, but I just thought that that was a cool color that would fit well enough, and so I made a blue surface to add to the gray. Oh, actually I forgot. Actually, in this one I'm going to change techniques. Another technique, the last technique, is to cut shapes. You may have some kind of fancy hole punch where you can punch out stars or something like that. You're welcome to use it. And you also have a scissors in your kit. So you can also just cut strips and make little squares, just like pixels, or if you really have time to make some other shape. But this is a nice quick shape that you can create. And so you can make little squares and have cut out shapes to fill the whole page. So this is your third technique. So you can either do dots, you can do torn paper, or you can cut out a shape and use that to fill your image. So the goal of this is to build up a surface that is of multiple values of either the same color or sort of similar cool colors and warm colors, to create an image that really vibrates and is a picture of something, but is also something more, something that when you get close you kind of see lots of big details and lots of little colors, and something that when you get further and further back it blends together to look like a whole image. So the goal is to stay pretty small. Please resist the temptation to procrastinate on this and then use great big strips of paper, because that's not really the same thing. Another version of the way to do this is to take an image and draw it out and then use little dots with a pen or a pencil, and create and shade with dots, which is even more tedious and long. Oh, there's that wet towel that I finally realized I needed because everything was sticking to my fingers. So I encourage you to get that ahead of time because it makes things a lot easier. But like I said, please do not default to using great big strips of paper and as a shortcut. You can go small, so you do not have to do, I use the entire page for this image, but you can go much smaller. And also, once you do the portrait, if you do need to do bigger strips, if you want a background, if you don't want to just do the portrait of the person but have something in the background, that's okay to use bigger strips or even some kind of background that you've created, big sheet of colored paper that you cut this out and put on or something like that. But for the portrait, I want you to really experiment and wrestle with the idea of this collaging with these smaller images, thinking in terms of like a pixel or a point or a dot, and how they come together and blend in the distance. So I'm almost done. I've sped it way up, and I know that this particular presentation is a bit longer than I've promised. I normally said that they would be 30 minutes or less. This one, I believe, goes up to 36. But remember, you have 2 weeks to complete this project. So if you took a little more time to watch this video, you still have a lot more time to work on this project. Our next class will be together. We'll do a short sketch in class, and then I'll give you more time to work on this and answer any questions you have about the project. But the goal is in the next week's first class will be dedicated towards working on this some more. So you will have time to work on this. Although I do encourage you to get spend a chunk, an hour or two on the weekend working on it. Make sure that you get it halfway done before our first class next week, so that you have a nice foundation to work from. You're not working a last minute. And as you can see, now I'm combining my techniques because and you're welcome to do that too. I just couldn't help myself. I kind of started, I really love the torn paper look, and I also just got excited about seeing what both the squares and then the torn paper looks like together. And like I said, this is something I used to love to do in high school, and so I kind of got excited and went a little bit rogue. But I'm not completing this whole image on this video, so don't worry. I'm just going to show you a few more things, and then you will be able to see the assignment prompt and get started. Okay, so now you've seen how to create a collage. So your assignment is going to be create a portrait with collage dots, cut shapes, or torn paper. It's up to you. Or you can kind of go rogue how I did and combine them. If you use the dot method, if you use the torn paper, I would expect that you would go much bigger than if you use the dot technique. Then you might want to go to one of those 5x7 cards, or even I would even go on the bigger, use the bigger paper, but just keep a smaller image because it's going to take longer. So create the size of image depending on which technique you are using and the size of paper that you decide to cut out or tear. So the directions are: find or take a portrait of yourself, family member, friend, or pet. Print the portrait out or have it easily accessible for reference on a device. So if you just have it on your cell phone and you're comfortable with just having that on to work from, that is fine. Draw or trace the portrait onto a piece of paper with a pencil. I recommend that you use large paper included in your kit, but you do not have to make the portrait as large as the page. Find colored scrap paper or use your markers and paper to make colored scraps. Cut, punch, or tear small pieces of that paper, and then use your glue stick to fill in the portrait, so meaning that you put glue on either the scrap of paper or the portrait and stick your pieces on. So use a glue stick to fill in the portrait with the small scraps, paying attention to detail and shading. Remember to take your time. Work the whole page, so not just one section. I often find that students get kind of focused on one section rather than working the whole page, and that way you can work the whole page, letting the glue dry and going back to areas as the glue dries, so you don't wind up in that sort of cycle where you're trying to work such a sticky area and things keep sticking back to your hands, as you saw in the video. Hopefully I've shown you what to do and what not to do. And then have a wet cloth nearby to wipe the glue off your hands periodically. That makes things a lot easier. All right, your project is going to be due in 2 weeks. This is a more labor-intensive project, so I'm giving you 2 weeks to do it, but you will need to show me a work-in-progress image next Monday. So do work on this and get it halfway done so that I can see that work in progress on Monday. All right, let me know if you have any questions, and I'm excited to see what you make.